Hi everybody, Carol Freeman here. I am the creator of 8-Week Keto Diet Programs, and I'm here today with Dr. Dawn Clum. Very excited to have you. You have an incredible resume, and so I'm going to let you share, who are you?
Well, it looks so good because they let me write it myself.
Okay.
That's the key. You want a good resume, write it yourself.
All right.
Who am I? I'm just your local friendly neighborhood chiropractor, mild-mannered nutritionist, and over the years, through the different experiences of integrated practice that we've had some great opportunities to work with a lot of large populations, a lot of targeted groups, and in a very integrated medical and holistic fashion, so that we were able to kind of pull from the best of both worlds to make some really targeted, really effective programs for people, metabolically centered. That's my focus: metabolic nutrition or insulin resistance and so forth. And then most of it came from private practice, but now I work in the population health world, where we serve large companies, and there's thousands of people that do these programs, and so we had to learn how to make it good for one-on-one, which is the most effective, and also applicable to people who are out there online and learning through distance concepts as well.
All right. Well, it sounds like a noble and very rewarding career that you've got, but it just leaves me with so many questions of how did you get there? How did you get all this experience? So first I want to know, where did you grow up? What was your childhood like? What led you to be a chiropractor?
Well, that was kind of preset forever. My dad's a chiropractor, my uncle, my aunt, my cousin, my sister, my wife. I just grew up in that world. My dad was president of a college for chiropractic for 30 years.
So you had no choice.
I had all the choices in the world, and I tried to go other ways, but it kept bringing me back.
Okay.
And so I gladly went in. My first degree was in human nutrition.
Okay.
I really liked that. And then I went into chiropractic, and then we went to Costa Rica, where we worked for 8 years and lived and raised a family, and we worked with the Costa Rican Olympic teams, the Central American Games, the Pan American Games, the Caribbean Games, a lot of professional athletes in soccer and so forth. So we got a lot of sports, and our whole role was peak performance. So it wasn't about injury management. It wasn't a physical therapy thing. It wasn't even your traditional chiropractic world. It was about how do we get these high-end athletes to get that 1 second more, to get that one reaction more, to get that little bit more when they're already at the top of the game. All about peak performance. And then you just translate that, because we had 7 practices there, into how does the average person improve their health or get to where they want to go or set appropriate goals and so on.
So how did you get connected with going to Costa Rica? Was that something a dream of yours, or?
They were just starting. The school that I did my undergrad in was just starting a program down there. They had a clinic and they had a rural outreach where they went out with the medical van type services, and we were part of that, and we were incorporating the WHO guidelines in third world countries, and so got a lot of different experience, and it popped up. I'm a traveler. I'm a backpacker. I've been to 40 countries on 6 continents. Our family has been to 8 countries. We've lived in 3, and so the opportunity came up, and we signed.
Nice. Okay. All right.
Yeah.
What do they call it? Wanderlust? You just got to go and see. And
my wife calls it triple Sag, but I don't.
Triple Sag. Oh, okay.
So if you're into that, she's like, so I get a little antsy. We move around a lot. We went from Costa Rica to Spain for a couple of years, Spain to Florida, New York, now here to Seattle.
Okay. Well, for those of you listening that don't know what the triple Sag thing is, it's Sagittarius, the whole astrology thing. So I'm a single Sag. So.
Yeah, I don't know any more than what I've already told you.
Okay. Well, we'll get your wife in here next, because she's going to have some good stuff to share. So that is really, really interesting. So I have a friend actually who has traveled a lot to third world countries to help implement nutrition changes. One of the things that she reflected on after she'd been several places was the idea that a lot of the nutrition work that's out there is that they try to take Western ideals and go and impose it on their culture. What is your perspective on that?
I don't see it as so much as an imposing factor. It's an economic factor.
Okay.
Anywhere you go, especially in a low education area where Coca-Cola is cheaper than water,
right,
you got a problem.
Right.
Anywhere that it's easier and faster to go get some bread or some fried flour convenience food than it is to go shop and make something for yourself, you're going to have a problem.
Right, okay.
And then they have all these brands that they see on TV and the great commercials, and so they just kind of follow down that road. And when I came, that was a big determining factor for me to get really back into nutrition, because I was not so much into it for a long time out of the country, because it didn't need to be. Coming back to the States, going to the kids' events, going to the schools, And just getting back into practice, the reality of the change over 10 years was dramatic.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Just the weight, the kids, the heavy kids, the hormonal dysfunction, all the problems with the PTA moms, just everything was just like, what happened? And it was so obvious. And so I wanted our family, first and foremost, to escape that route.
Yeah.
And so I tell people all the time, I'm glad people like what we do and what we teach and so on, but I do this for me. I need to learn for myself. I've been diagnosed with cancer twice.
Oh, wow.
I have had metabolic syndrome twice, and I've always handled it naturally without any medical intervention. But you need to be, I learned, you can't just go on autopilot. You can't just go with the status quo, because that's where it leads you. In this country in particular, metabolic syndrome, insulin resistance, cardiometabolic problems, cancer, weight gain, they're all coming from the same stem.
Right.
And so if I hope to escape that and not return to some of those scare points that I had before, and I want my kids to avoid that, I need to be proactive. And I started learning, and then what I find makes sense to me and works in my world, I share with my patients. And as we see results there, we share with the populations, the public, and so on.
Yeah. Okay. Well, it sounds like you've had quite a learning experience from your own health crises. And so what did you try different approaches when you had those different diagnoses, or has it always been the same approach? Or?
It's always been the same approach. I was diagnosed, the 2 times I was diagnosed with cancer was skin cancer.
Okay.
Both times was not, I had a medical doctor on my staff who saw a mole on my back when we were at a pool.
Okay.
At a pool party. And he's like, hey, you got to come in Monday into my office and we got to talk about this. And I did, and I couldn't even see it. And that was a reality check. And another time I went in, I had eaten some bad seafood, and I had a major rash reaction. I went into a dermatologist, and they found a mole on my neck, and they're like, yeah, the rash is fine, but that thing on your neck, that's cancer, and you got to do something.
Wow.
So both times, it shakes you up. I was I was younger then, and basically what I did, because we were on a pretty good, healthy roll and lifestyle as it was, I just tightened it up.
Okay.
I lost some weight, I upped the physical activity, and I started doing some rotational fasting concepts. And within 6 months, both times, the lesion, I never had a biopsy, I don't know what it was, that was just a diagnosis, eventually died. It kind of dried up.
You never even had it removed then?
No.
Wow.
No, it dried up.
That's pretty remarkable.
It went through some stages, not some ugly stages, but eventually came to the surface, the skin separated, and it fell off. And then it repaired, because I still have the mole on my neck here somewhere.
That is remarkable.
There's not even a scar.
I love all these interviews I'm doing, because I get to hear more of these amazing health transformations that people go through from the same similar dietary approach. And I had kind of a mole on my leg that over the last year has almost disappeared as well. And so it's really interesting, all these changes that happen.
It shook us up. It shook me up on a lot of different levels, because as a practitioner, as someone who's grown up in this, I've never had a prescription medication in my life. I've never had a vaccine. I just don't live in that world. And so to have this come up in my face, this diagnosis, shook me up. I'm like, this shouldn't happen to me. Why? I didn't even tell my wife. It was on my back. I could hide it. It was on my neck. I could hide it.
Wait, is she going to see this?
She knows now, years later, because it's almost like I had to come through a confessional and say, look, I'm not as infallible as I like to think I am.
Yeah.
And then because I have a virtual online practice, and 95% of all my clients are healthcare practitioners. Okay. And they kind of come almost like to confession at church, going, hey, I know all this stuff, I teach this stuff, I work in this world, but I got my stuff too. Yeah. And I'm like, well, everybody does. Yeah. And so I work with them. They can be challenging to work with, but everyone goes through it, because the environment we're in, the misinformation that's out there. Yeah. If a healthcare practitioner who's immersed in this can still stumble, can still get caught up in it, the average person out there, how are they going to navigate? Right. It's hard for us, and this is my job. Yeah. So we work really hard to boil down the conversation points, to boil down the communication, to make it very simple yet accurate. Right. Because there's a risk in oversimplifying. You can go off track. You can be wrong. And I've fallen into that. The medical world definitely falls into that. And that's how we go down the wrong path. But we want that to be concise. We want it to be effective. We want to make it. People need to understand. Not just do what we say, but learn what we know, so they decide themselves to do it. Yeah. Well, you said that you've gone down the wrong path in the past. Will you share with us some of the things in nutrition you thought were true in the past that now you've changed your mind about? Well, the 2 times I found myself in metabolic syndrome were both times where we moved, either across country or from one country to another, out of my routine, new house, finding schools for kids, new practice, whatever it was doing, and then it just takes a few months, and that's when I really learned that my genetic susceptibility drives me because I'm very insulin reactive. And next thing you know, putting on weight, which is not a big deal if the metabolic factors are in line, but they weren't. And they went out of whack, and so I had to, use my own program and bring it back to center. So if I'm not on my game, then I start to drift down that road.
Yeah.
And I'll eventually start just gradually, my set point for whatever reason, I can go crazy trying to figure this out, for my weight is a little bit heavier, and so I got to be on it, and I got to just, otherwise, I think it's just the environment is so toxic or hard to deal with or stressful, whatever it is, that it leads me down that road. And so that was probably the biggest eye opener, is that you got to be proactive. And so we started saying, if you're not proactively improving your health, you will passively lose it. If you're not actively improving your health, you will passively lose it. It's just the way it is in our world right now.
Well, there's some quote about if you're not growing, you're dying.
Yeah. And the other thing is, and so in practice, we tried to do the best we can with the information we had. We did calorie-based programs. We did 5 to 7 meals a day. I work with athletes. We did the high protein, thermogenic type of workouts, as well as diet programs. So we did all these things. I work with athletes who were natural. I work with the ones who weren't natural, and we learned a lot. But eventually, as you try to translate that to someone who's not an athlete or someone who's looking at resolving a health problem, it collided. And those athletes eventually crashed.
Oh, okay.
I mean, absolutely crashed. So, youth and high activity can guise a lot of unhealthiness going on. You can't feel, just like metabolic syndrome, there are more people in this country with metabolic syndrome at normal weight than there are with people with metabolic syndrome who are obese.
Oh, so let's pause for just a moment and cover what is metabolic syndrome for people that are listening or watching that don't have any idea what that really means.
Yeah, metabolic syndrome is a wide variety of different changes that go on in our body metabolically. And the way we measure it, the most traditional way, is through different blood values. So there's 5 risk factors, and if you have 3 out of these 5, any 3, then you consider to have metabolic syndrome. And those 5 are high blood pressure, so anything over 130/80, high triglycerides, anything over 150, low good cholesterol or HDL, okay, increased waistline. So for women, the high end is 35 inches. The men's high end is 40 inches, so that point and higher is considered a risk factor. And then high fasting blood sugar. This is blood sugar between 100 and 125. 126 starts to go into diabetes, type 2 diabetes, and normal goes up to 100. Not ideal, but normal. And so any 3 of those 5, and you consider to have metabolic syndrome. And I would say if you have just the fasting blood sugar levels that are above 100, even really it's anything above 83, then you're going down that path.
Yeah.
It's what I call pre-diabetes.
Yes.
If you have any kind of insulin issues, if you have any kind of liver fat issues, those are all in the same category. You're metabolically sick, and you're going down that path, no matter what you think or how you look or how you feel.
Yeah. I had metabolic syndrome before I started my ketogenic diet, even before the car accident, which was a big turning point for me. Even after getting a bachelor's and a master's degree in nutrition, I had metabolic syndrome doing what I thought was a healthful way of eating. So I had, my blood sugar was 96, so just below the cutoff. My waist measure was 40 inches, so definitely met that criteria. My HDL was probably like 35, so that was low. My blood pressure surprisingly was okay initially, but moved into that. What was the other one? What am I missing? Triglycerides. Oh yeah, those were definitely like 220 last time.
Yeah.
Check that. So
if
I
someone
definitely
wants a
had
fast track factor, triglycerides correlate very well with insulin. If you're getting a blood test, ask them to put fasting insulin on there. They allow up to 25, your range will go up to 25 as normal, but really anything over 5 and you're insulin resistant, you're going down this. That's the foundational metabolic problem that drives all these things. And triglycerides correlate very well with insulin. So if you don't happen to get your insulin checked, or you have old blood test that doesn't check fasting insulin, just look at your triglycerides. Anything over 100, you're going down that road.
Yeah. Well, and these are really important things that people should look at. The traditional medical model is just wait till you have diabetes and then try to reverse it.
No, that's not the medical model.
Well, yeah, they say it's not reversible.
Correct.
You wait till you have diabetes and then you manage it.
Yes.
You maintain your diabetes is basically what it is. But there are ways you can catch this really, really much earlier I mean, you can catch it when you're 7, like your son, and prevent it in the first place, but you can also catch it by looking at your triglycerides and then actually asking for the fasting insulin test as well, which can help catch it much
There's
earlier.
a lot of other social factors you can look for. For example, if you're gaining weight or have gained weight and you can't lose it. A lot of us gain weight on and off. It's a natural cycle of life. And normally we know what we need to do to drop it back down. And so now if you find yourself at that higher weight and you do those normal things and it doesn't come back down, you're now in a state of hormone resistance or weight loss resistance, and that's indicating insulin as well. If you start to notice the weight, your belt line is getting tight, but your weight's not changing, that means your body composition is, you're going into insulin resistance. If you start to notice that your cravings change, or you get bloated after you eat when you normally wouldn't before, or you get tired after you eat, things like that, usually insulin resistance. So there's other tells you can do along the way. And the reason it's so important is insulin resistance or insulin problems is the gateway hormonal dysfunction for everything else. You know, people are worried about their thyroid, their adrenals or cortisol, their estrogen, their testosterone, you name it, but it starts with insulin. Insulin is the foundation. It's happening so common, and it disrupts everything else because it is such an important hormone. It drives the show.
Yeah, and we're trying to get the word out, but it's still not very much talked about or even acknowledged. I mean, there's insulin deniers, aren't there?
Yeah, of course. I mean, well, there's absolutely, like anything, there's a lot of different camps on that. We knew a lot more about insulin before we could test for insulin.
Right.
You know, before we had insulin to inject into people, because once we had that, starting in 1922, suddenly we had what they thought was a cure for type 1 diabetes, and everything went very medical, very supplemental, very medication-centered. Even now, that's why they believe it's a progressive degenerative disease, that once you're there, all you can hope to do is slow it down and manage the symptoms of it, that you can't stop it or reverse it. And that's just, that's never been true. It might be true if that's the only way you apply your therapy or your approach, but it's very misleading, and it's sad for people who get stuck in that.
Yeah. Well, what have you found then for somebody who's had somebody who's had metabolic syndrome, experienced that twice? What have you found is kind of the optimal diet and way of living that helps you prevent that or avoid that?
Yeah, the great thing is this whole process stems from that root of insulin dysfunction or irregularity or insulin resistance, a lot of different names for it. So if we just back and go upstream and just focus on what will improve insulin, then you'll watch your blood sugar change, you'll watch your cardiovascular markers, your cholesterol and things change for the better, you'll watch your waistline change, you'll be able to lose weight, because insulin, here's the key thing, there's only one hormone that makes you gain weight and keep weight on. One, and that's insulin. There's at least eight hormones that will start the process to burn fat off your body, but when insulin comes on strong, she trumps all the other ones, right? Or, that's a bully on the playground. And so, insulin's a key factor. So what we do is we promote the insulin-friendly lifestyle. And so if you just start there, you can come a long way. And that's a good place to start, because then the things clear up and you get kind of a baseline and you realize what's really a problem and what's not. You'd be surprised by going this route how many things change that you thought were this big problem. They weren't. They were an effect of another problem.
Yeah.
So insulin friendly. First thing we have people do is stop snacking. Go to 3 meals a day. That's it. It could be as simple as breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Just don't put those snacks. Because every time you eat, no matter what you eat, even if it's healthy, even if it's carrots and apples and almonds or whatever, you're gonna spike some insulin. And so by going to 3 meals a day, I'm not telling you how much to eat or even what to eat at this point. You're going to allow that insulin to come back down and that overall exposure to go down, and that process won't start to accumulate. So that's step number one. That's simple, is to eat 3 meals a day or even 2. You're not going to starve. You're not going to go crazy. You're going to be able to do it. If you have any symptoms from that, it's usually detox symptoms or carb addiction symptoms, but it's not real life-threatening type of stuff, even though it can be uncomfortable. And so that's step number one. Step number two is increase the healthy fats. And we need fat in every meal, and not just as a cooking medium. We're talking as an ingredient. So cook with it, but also have something in each meal that is a good healthy fat, whether it's olives, avocado, nuts, seeds, or a fat like butter or coconut oil or so forth. But make sure it's in there. And again, we haven't changed what you eat yet. We've changed kind of when you eat. And we've added something there. And then once that kind of settles in, then we start to bring down the things that stimulate insulin the most, which, as we know, are sugars, grains, and processed foods. People don't understand anything processed stimulates insulin. The body reads anything in a powder or in a denatured, processed state as basically a sugar. So we're talking protein powders, all these workout people, protein powders. We're talking meal replacements. We're talking
protein bars.
Any of that kind of thing. Anything that's got a bunch of ingredients, you don't know what they are. It's processed. The body interprets it as sugar because protein powder will raise insulin as much as sugar. Even though the same amount of protein in, say, a piece of fish doesn't raise it the same amount, only a little bit. So it's not just about the macronutrient, it's about the food. And so part of our progression is to go to real foods. Get off of anything that's made. Food, should be an ingredient, not have ingredients, right? And so that's what we go for.
That's lovely. And that's one of the, there are a lot of different schools of thought still about the perfect diet and what's best for everybody. But one of the things that we can kind of agree on universally for, I think, almost every approach is that what we're finding is true is that real foods, like whole foods as close as they grow in nature, tend to be the healthiest for everyone, regardless of what approach you find works for you. There's never been a study I've seen that shows that having processed packaged food makes you healthier than eating real whole foods.
It's a great example to use. Why does powdered protein have a different response in the body than whole protein?
Right.
And it starts you thinking, why would that happen? Because there's no mechanism for powdered protein. There's no mechanism in our body for chemicals or for processed foods, even for refined sugar. There is no mechanism. There's no pathway. There are no gene sequences. There is nothing in there to handle that. So it comes in and it kind of goes, I don't know what to do. I guess I'll do this. I think of it like this. I don't know if everyone remembers or everyone did this. As a kid, I had a coin sorter where I put coins in the top and it went tink, 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 and it went quarters, nickels, dimes, pennies, right? It sorted it out. So that's like your body. Your body has all these pathways and it might bounce around a little and it might use different ways to get there, but it sorts everything out. And so now take that coin sorter that's set up like that, and then you take a coin from Canada or from Mexico, and you put it in. It might go in, but it doesn't bounce around the same. There's no place for it to go that perfectly fits, so it goes into wherever it can get in. And so that's what chemicals and processed foods and elements in our body do. They kind of bounce around, they use alternative modes, and they go wherever they can fit in, but it's not ideal, and it can't be healthy because if it was healthy, there'd be a mechanism and a pathway for it, custom for it, but there's not. So it has to cut corners and has to guess. And we don't want our body guessing, right? We just don't want that.
Right. Coming out of a time where people thought that, the science of food was exciting and innovative, and, scientists could make food that was better for us, but it turns out that it's just not the case.
It's absolutely not the case. And a lot of people look to vitamins, multivitamins. Well, I eat junky food, but then I had to take my multi. Well, your multi's probably junk as well. I do a whole video on how they make them and where they come from, what a synthetic vitamin, what a natural vitamin. There's a big difference between a vitamin in something, whether it's a pill or a food. There's the vitamin, there's the amount there. There's the amount that actually gets digested. There's the amount that gets absorbed, and then there's the amount that gets utilized. They're not the same. Just because there's 100 grams of something, you might only be getting 7% of that. But you don't know that because you don't. If you didn't know that pathway for whatever you're taking, you wouldn't know. That's why when you look at like protein that we saw this at the conference, protein that comes from beans, trying to compare it, or broccoli, and trying to compare that protein number that comes from steak, the numbers might even be the same on how much protein is in each, but you will actually get into your body 5 to 8 times more from that steak than you will from those vegetables. So it's not apples to apples at all.
And never mind the fact that the weight of that broccoli would end up being, a truckload of broccoli to get.
Yeah, absolutely.
You can't eat that much broccoli.
Well, if you could, you won't do it for long, I'll say.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Okay, so many more topics. So you were really, you have a really big following on Facebook. You've been doing a lot of videos.
Just started with those videos.
Okay.
I was surprised. Someone challenged me. I was on a call, and he's like, "Doc, I love this. Can you record this?" I'm like, "Yeah, I can record it." He's like, "No, but what about a video? And I said, "Well," he's like, "Just put your phone up and push go live now." And I'm like, "I'm not ready. I don't have this." He's like, "Just do it." And so I did it.
Yeah.
I wrote a little thing on my board, and I did it. And that was the first one, and it's been viewed over 5,000 times. And I was like,
yeah.
It doesn't get any easier.
Okay, well, you started then as like a prolific, almost a blogger on Facebook. Your status updates, you would put the equivalent of like, a 5-page blog post as your status update. And I just noticed people want this information. They want to understand what's going wrong in their body. And you put it in these terms that are, in your face, like, look, this is what's going on. You're not sugarcoating it. You maybe have some people that are disagreeing with you along the way, but you're gathering this this momentum of people that are like, wow, yeah, this guy's telling it like it is, and now I understand what's going wrong in my body and why what I've been trying for so long isn't working. And like we referenced the conference, we were at the Low Carb San Diego conference just July of 2016. This video will be out there forever. So they talked about how we've got to have this grassroots approach to this dietary change. The government's not going to get on board and just all of a sudden say, hey, sorry, the last 30 years we've told you the opposite of what. They're not going to do that. There's a lot of consumerism, business, profit centers that are centered around this as well. And so we've got to have this grassroots effort, which is people that are changing their diet and getting health benefits from that, but then also the healthcare practitioners. We've got to get out there. We've got to get the word out. We've got to help people just start changing on their own, because it's not going to come from a top-down approach. So,
well, it all started with my evolution of my own learning.
Okay.
And especially when you come from a traditional education, whether it's nutrition, chiropractic, medicine, you get some overly simplified concepts. You got to learn a lot. And so I get that. But then you start to realize, wait a minute, insulin does this? I didn't learn that. You mean the pancreas, you mean diabetes is more of a liver problem than pancreas? I didn't learn that. Or what I'm doing is wrong? That pisses me off. And so I want to finally start to do that. And then it's like my journal on Facebook. And then I write how I understand it. And I can judge by the feedback if it was clear or not. And if it's not clear, then I don't know it well enough and I need to study again. And I do the talks, they're just on my bookshelf that I put the paper on. But I got 700 books there. I go through 2 to 10 a month, and you'll see in my blog post, you can kind of, if you start to read them, or my Facebook post, you'll know, oh, he must be reading a book on this, because it's how I process it through. And then how can I use that and make it practical to my life and to the lives of the people that are doing right now? And it should be understandable. Because the other thing is, I'm going through a PhD program in health psychology.
Oh, well, that's important to tell us too. Okay.
Well, I'm not there yet, so I'll tell you when I finish.
You just started it, right?
I'm in my first year.
Okay.
Yeah. And so a lot of it is, okay, how do we get people to engage? How do we get people to act? What makes the difference? And the truth is that people have to reframe their thinking. And the only way to do that is to learn. If they don't learn and believe the new concept, they won't do it. It's like me telling you what to eat. You might do it for a little while, but no one likes to be told what to eat. They'll go back to what they think they know. Whereas if you can say it in a way that is an aha moment, that creates some clarity for them, they at least open the door to the possibility that there's a different way to look at this. Then there's a possibility that they'll get it. And then once someone gets it and they understand it and they believe it, then their actions are easy. Okay. The other way around, that's hard. The other way around makes it a diet. The other way around makes it a gimmick, makes it a fad, makes it who knows what, makes it a treatment. And it's not really, but by following what you know and what makes sense to you, then it's a lifestyle. Yeah. That's the key.
Yeah. Well, so that's part of your education piece. What it sounds like a natural progression for this program for you is what you were already passionate about doing and discovering what motivates people to make those changes.
Yeah, and it's a process. Working in the population health, we have people in this program that are in C-suites. We have doctors that are in health care systems. We also have factory workers, truck drivers, and part-time people, and everything in between. And so we have to be able to speak to that level. And I go around and I speak at conferences, and those are practitioners. Those are doctors and so forth. You can speak a certain way, and we understand each other. But who's going to make the change? It's not the doctors. It's the people that they serve. So we want to be able to speak to even the doctors in that form so they can then communicate it on. My biggest litmus test is when I'm working with someone, if they understand it and they can affect their household, if a man or woman can affect their spouse and their kids, then I've communicated in a way that made sense. Because not just about the individual, it's about how they translate that into their life and they communicate that to others to get them on board. Yeah. That's how we make a real big impact, a societal impact, and a multi-generational impact as well.
So who do you find has more resistance, the doctors and healthcare providers or the general public?
No, it's the doctors and healthcare providers. Yeah, because we learn a lot, And sometimes we learn it, we do it, and we even see some results doing it. And then someone comes along and says, no, it's not that way. It's confronting.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I got to change. You know how many times on Facebook I said, look, I'm reversing. I was wrong.
Mm-hmm.
You know, public service announcement. Where I used to talk about. I used to sell in my office agave because I thought it was a great thing. And then more info came out. I said, oh no, I know I sold some of these agave. Sorry, not doing that. I used to do protein powders and go, oh look, new information.
Yeah.
No more protein powders. And it's like, it's tough.
Yeah. Well, at least you're, and maybe your health psychology degree will help you. Maybe there's a phrase or a term for this that people that are open, right? They're able to reflect and look and acknowledge when they're wrong, and
willingness to learn.
Willingness to pivot on what you promote as well. Like I had a big change, and I was trained in a program that's integrating psychology and nutrition together, and we basically were taught, and most research shows this, that it's a fruitless endeavor to try to get people to lose weight from traditional approaches because they can't sustain it. And their body works through various hormonal mechanisms to try to regain that weight and slow their metabolism. And so it was cruel and unusual punishment to ever recommend any kind of a restrictive diet to people and ever to try to get them to lose weight. You should just try to let them embrace the beauty of their body, whatever it looks like, and eat mindfully and intuitively. And you know what that led me to? Like I told you, metabolic syndrome already.
Well, there's two sides to that. You know, one of them is that daily calorie restriction of any kind, without changing the habits and the quality and the food and the timing and all that kind of stuff, will still drive. You're just eating less of the junk, but you're still eating the junk. You'll still drive insulin resistance. You'll still go down the same road. We know now, after 50 years of research, that model, even if you do lose some weight, the long-term outcomes increases your risk for heart disease, cancer, stroke, and diabetes. And you're like, wait a minute, that's why we did this in the first place, and yet it increases their overall risk of that because it makes them worse. It makes them metabolically worse. Like the first video, it drives down the metabolism and throws everything off. That's one side of it. So not good. That's why I won't do daily calorie restriction. I'll do fasting and fasting rotation. We work a lot with different customized fasting protocols, but that's not daily. That's not low calorie. It's a whole different concept. But daily low calorie ruins our system. And the other side of that, it's not about the weight, it's about the health. It's really, really important. You can be overweight and metabolically healthy, and you can be normal weight and metabolically sick, or both can switch, right? So if you're overweight, first thing to do is to address that metabolic health, because if you don't get that healthy, you won't lose that weight. And then the other video, the third video that we did, we talked about if you're metabolically unhealthy and you have fatty liver and you have this stuff going on, until that clears out, you can't burn off body fat. That's how people can do all the right things. I mean, really do the right things for a month, 2 months, and see no results or get worse. It's because that has to come out first. And once it does, then it can, because the body fat's not dangerous. It's the organ fat. All right, and so once that's down, then because the liver does all that work, has to take care of itself first before it can take care of the rest of the body. Because that fat we don't like to see, that's just ego. That's not dangerous. But the fat we can't see, that could kill us.
Well, and I think it's Dr. Jason Fung that came out recently with one of his prolific blog posts talking about how the fat that we see is actually a protective mechanism that our body is doing us a favor by getting that sugar out of the blood and putting it in fat cells, whereas we've been trained that fat should be the focus of what you're trying to fix rather than the underlying health behind it.
I've been following Dr. Fung for a long time, and for years now, back when he just had those first videos that he started without, and we communicated with him and on some cases and things like that. He's a great resource. It's questionable whether that's really what's going on, or it's just storing it for survival or something like that. And it doesn't seem to be the overt blood sugar that's the problem. You can have high blood sugar, you have low blood sugar. If you're in the right metabolic state, it doesn't change anything. It does. When you block the insulin receptors in the kidneys, for example, you don't get any neuropathy, right? That means no neuropathy means no cutting off toes and feet. Yet the blood sugar is still high. If you do the same thing in the eyes, they don't get the diabetic blindness. Yet the blood sugar is still high. It has to do with the insulin. Because the blood sugar is tied to the insulin, you're keeping the insulin high. That's the problem. But it's not the blood sugar. If you could somehow erase the insulin effect, blood sugar is almost irrelevant. Obviously, if everyone could challenge that, but I mean, it's almost irrelevant. It's the hormonal disruption that comes from the insulin that follows the blood sugar. That's the problem.
Okay.
Yeah. So but but same protocols follow. So it's all the same stuff.
Okay, so one of the blog posts, or not blog posts, one of the Facebook posts I remember from you, however long ago, 6 months or so ago, was a really eye-opening one for me. And Dr. Eads at the conference we went to, he kind of showed the same thing, but the whole comparison of the Egyptians and the whole, the recent trend towards like, well, love your body, and women get this movement of like, we get to accept our body, so why can't men get the same, accept your body? So the movement of the dad bod as being the new hot bod for dads. And you talked about how this was actually just a repeat of something that was several thousand years ago.
Yeah. Well, actually, I got a lot of it from his book. So,
okay.
Yes, that was, he's got a great book on that.
Protein Power, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I think that was one. But anyway, and that's what got me thinking. We started looking at it. If you look, the Egyptians were the first grain-based society. They were incredibly grain-based. Believe it or not, even more grain-based than we are now. They didn't have as many processed foods and chemicals. And so, but if you look at them, everyone from their soldiers to their elite were fat. And they didn't have pictures. All their hieroglyphics are stick figures. I've been to Egypt. I've been through the tombs. You see them. They're all really tall and really thin. I think that's just for artist fact, right? Artist rendition. But what they could do, they didn't have pictures. What they could do is they had sculptures made of people, if you could, even from middle class. This wasn't just the elite, the middle and upper. And so they'd have like a husband and wife, and they would be sitting wherever they're sitting, and they have their dress from their family line, and they would have a sculpture made. And so these sculptures were like their version of a picture, of a portrait. And you start to look at them, hundreds of them, thousands of them. You see these fat people sitting there. You see these men with these great big beer bellies and man boobs going on. And it's like, whoa. And you see the women, big, proportion the same. But, the real takeaway is the men. I'm like, wow, it's because they were so grain centric. And so it was so dominant in their life that, they developed the same bod we're seeing now. And so that's not an attractive bod. That's a dysfunctional bod. That's a hormonal bod. And here's the thing. This is a sensitive subject, but we can start seeing this in children. Dads and stuff like that, do whatever you want, I don't care. But let's look at your kids. When I came back to the States, I started to notice that these kids, not only were there more and more overweight kids, like my dad always said growing up, he was the fat kid, not one of the fat kids. There was like one fat kid in any class or group. Now there's only like a few skinny kids. It's changed. But anyway, as you look at these kids, they're gaining weight differently. You can see kids, they're getting puffy. Girls, they call it a muffin top across there. I don't know if it's a bad word. I'm sorry if it is. And but the pooch or whatever up through here, that's a hormonal shift. You see the boys get heavy in the chest. My mom used to say he's chesty, right? Thanks, Mom.
And not from doing too many bench presses.
Yeah, not that kind. And so what you see is you see them gain weight through here. You see the chest actually start to form peaks. Small peaks. You can see it through their t-shirts. And now you're starting to see those peaks start to form, and they're not that overweight. They're really not. They don't have the huge overlying belly, but the chest that's hormonal. That is hormonal. That's insulin going crazy. That's estrogen and testosterone being down-regulated. Estrogen, even though they're prepubescent, these are still factors, and they're sensitive to it, and they're setting up their body for the rest of their life.
Yeah.
And so when you see that, that's a problem. You think, oh, they're big boned. No, they're not. Oh, they're active.
There aren't any bones up there.
They're, they're gonna. It's just a phase. They're gonna outgrow it. Not that. Kids do go like this, and then they get tall, and they go this. But those are some signs. The roundness in the boys' faces. That's why boys are maturing later, and girls are maturing earlier. It's the polar opposite because we are to the same hormonal problem because men and women have different reactions. It's really pretty scary.
Well, so along these lines, let's talk about the idea that parents have about how, kids should get to eat whatever they want, and it's a treat, and they're young, and, I have my...
Who made that up? Well, since when did kids get to eat whatever they want? I never got to. You go talk to your grandma and ask her if that's the way it goes. No, grandma used to spoil you. What did that used to mean? A candy.
Yeah.
A chocolate,
right.
Not a box, not a never-ending bowl, not all these different things, not at every meal, every day. Now kids get treats constantly, and you got to say no. Xander, come over here.
What?
This is my son Xander, 7. He has challenges with this. Xander, we had a baseball game the other day, and what did they give out?
Gatorade.
Gatorade. And did you have one?
No,
Why?
because my dad didn't let me.
Because my dad didn't let me. But, the point is you have to make some restrictions. Thanks, buddy. You got something to say?
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
And then the other team, the people who bring the Gatorade, oh, I'm so sorry, and then they think in their head, oh, he's such a jerk, and I'm going,
Just Gatorade, right?
Yeah, and then but the game before it was a big old patch of bubble gum that had a baseball player on it.
Okay.
And I was like, no, we're not doing that. Or, at soccer games, they used to bring little orange wedges. Now they bring donut holes. And I'm going, no, you got to say no sometimes.
Yeah.
You got to say no. You go to the pizza, we bring stuff to food, and we got to say no. But at the same time, we teach the kids why.
Right.
And he knows, too. He knows. Come here, Xander. Again. For example, and everyone has their own terms and their own plus. What happens if you eat a lot of wheat?
My knee starts hurting when I go to bed.
Ah.
Yeah. You hear that, parents?
You're
if
young,
you think your
yeah.
kids have growing pains, they probably don't. Growing doesn't hurt. What happens is they eat something, they create an inflammatory response, and usually at night when they're calming down, it sets in, and they get leg pain, they get knee pain. And I know if he's eating a lot of wheat and he's getting that inflammatory, that gliadin reaction that's going on in his body, that night he comes knocking on our door and he says, either my knees hurts or my leg hurts, and that means something happened. That happens after he goes to a Boy Scout event and they have pizza there. So you can't be in control of everything, but it can happen. And when it does, we now know growing pains are a food reaction.
Right.
Thanks, bud.
I think that's really important. More important, maybe even, like you said, dads can do whatever they want. Like when you're an adult, you can choose whatever you're going to eat. But I think because it sets the stage for the rest of your life, like it's even more important that children eat healthy foods because they're growing. They need lots and lots of nutrition. They need all those nutrients that are in real food. And when they're eating these processed foods because we think, oh, they should get to eat whatever they want, or they're young, they have a fast metabolism. Watch that light behind you, dude. That it sets the stage for metabolic damage very young, and it's more of a disservice, I think, to children to feed them those things than maybe even, adults having them.
Well, I did a Facebook post as well that said, hey, would you consider me a bad parent if? And I said, what if I took 10 teaspoons of sugar and gave it to my 7-year-old right now and said, that's breakfast?
Yeah.
Everyone would flip out. They say, yeah, you're a bad parent. Not only are you a bad parent, I'd get child protective services.
Yeah.
That would be child abuse, especially if I did that multiple times a day. No one would agree to it. But yet that's what's in the average kid's breakfast. Between the cereal, the milk, the toast, the orange juice, it's 10 to 15 teaspoons of sugar.
Yeah.
No different. Maybe some water's mixed in there. But that's it, and they're doing it every day. And so at some point, to continually feed these kids toxic, metabolically unhealthy foods, at some point we're going to have to say no, and that the parent is responsible for this. You got to, you can always judge the commitment to health of a parent by how healthy or what the weight status is of their children. People hate to hear that. I get it. No one wants to see that. No one wants to think they're a bad parent. But when kids are, especially when they're very overweight, or they have chronic asthma, or they have all these different issues, they're constantly sick, there's a reason for that. It's not genetics, it's not bad luck. Something's driving that, and the parents need to step up and learn how to not do that.
Well, and I have to give them credit because most parents out there are not like trying to be a bad parent. They're trying to do what they think is right. So they're trying to feed their kids snacks and fruit snacks and things like that.
Yeah, well,
but they just and so the traditional approach is like, well, I'm just trying to get my kid to eat less. If they're still eating the highly processed and a lot of carbs and sugar, it's not going to work. So
we have to step up and do some tough love in this subject. The two biggest parental lies, I wrote about this a couple years ago. One is, I'm doing the best that I can. What mom, dad, a parent says that kind of shuts off the conversation. And I go, really? You're doing the best you can. What do you do? How many books on the subject have you read? None. How many professionals have you consulted on the subject? None. How many blog posts do you subscribe to about this? None. Where do you get your information? I don't get any information. Okay, that's the best you can do? If that's the best you can do, I'm surprised you get out of bed. I'm surprised you can have a job. That's baloney, okay? The other one is, I just want what's best for my kids. That's another conversation stopper. And I go, really? What's best for your kids? Oh, I want them to be healthy. And you go back down the same thing. They do want what's best, but their actions do not reflect it at all whatsoever. And parents, the number one reason for that is, unfortunately, it's laziness. Or it's inconvenient to them because it takes their time to do this. Oh, I don't have time to make my kids' meals all the time. Well, make the time. If you really want what's best for your kids and you're going to do the best you can, you'll budget time and you'll do what you need to do to make food for your kids, to shop for your kids, to learn what is best for them and give it to them and then hold that line. Otherwise, those excuses are just lies. Okay, and then when they get older and they're out of your house and they're sick and they have diabetes before they're 25, you go, oh no, it must run in my family. No, the problem is no one ran in your family, and you were eating terrible, and you caused this predisposition in your own child. And I'm not saying they're doing it on purpose. No one wants that. I get it. There's no psychopaths out there trying to kill their kids. But neglect will do as much damage as an intentful action sometimes if we're not careful, especially in the environment and world we're in, because it's set against us. It's an uphill battle. So we have to get it in gear.
Yeah.
And that's why we call our website Your Wellness Tribe. We don't want a village. I don't want a community. I want my tribe. I want my people. I want like-minded people. I want people to join that who are going down this road, who share together, because that's who I want around me. That's like more like family than anything. Like-minded family. So I know not all families think the same, But that's what you want. I want a tribe. We need to do that, because here's a really interesting statistic. One of the number one deciding factors in the outcome of your medical care at any given point in time is not your hospital efficiency. It's not the education of your doctors. It's not the access to the care. It's not the timing of the procedure. It is the community health literacy around you. Not the doctor's education, the community. It's a weird correlation that goes in there. So part of what we do and part of what you're doing, part of what I do in educating ourselves and sharing with other people is hope to raise that community awareness and that medical or health intelligence so that in case myself or my family needs something, we're actually helping ourselves out by that. It's a funny dynamic, but it is a tribal concept, a community concept that we need to focus on. Population.
That is fantastic. I literally have chills. I don't know if it sounds like that exciting of a thing, but it's just this whole, community movement, the village, the tribe. The tribe sounds like, you're working together to fight this battle that's out there. Like you said, everywhere you turn and every corner in every person's car, there's these refined sugary products out there. So we've got a big battle to fight to change this.
Part of the focus I'm doing in the PhD is on carb addiction.
Okay.
Sugar addiction. It's a drug.
Yeah.
It's a drug. And when you look at it that way, you got a pusher at every kiosk in the mall. The cubicle next to you, in front of you, behind you are all drug dealers.
Yes.
And they're all enabling you to use in that sense because it's everywhere. It's innocuous with everything. It's given to all the kids. And it's like, oh my, could you imagine if instead of sugar, that was cocaine being offered everywhere?
Yeah.
Would you allow my 7-year-old to come to your house and have a beer with dinner? No. Why? Because it's bad. It's a drug. Then, why are we sitting him down and having to have pizza with a chocolate milk followed up by a brownie? Seriously. Let's really think these things through. And the tribe, is, like you said, is more aggressive. And that's what I want. You can't join a tribe. You have to reflect a tribe, right? You can't just sign up. You can sign up for a newsletter or whatever. But if you really want to be a part of a tribe, you got to be that tribe. You can't join. You're not a member. You don't get invited. You are that tribe, and that's who you want around you. Because when things get tough, you want to rely on those around you. Because when things get tough in my life, like I've seen, especially when it comes to my kids, when you're a parent and your kids get sick or there's a problem, they're injured, your brain goes nutballs, right? It's just crazy. And so I reach out, and I reach out to my tribe, and I'm glad they're there. And when things don't go the right way, I can reach out to my tribe. I got 7,000 healthcare practitioners on my Facebook pages, and I can say, hey, I need help. And they're not going to send me down a road that they know isn't in our life, isn't in our thinking. And so it's great to have, and I think everyone should have it, no matter what it is, even if it's not ours. Just get that going.
Yeah. One of the things I found that dictates whether people are successful in making a big dietary change long term is that they make it part of their identity. And being part of a tribe is that's part of your identity. So when people think about who they are, they think about, their religion, the way they eat, whether they're vegan or they're carnivore or keto, their mom or they're a dad or they're a grandparent. They've got these identifiers that dictate who they are. And what I found is that people are really successful is that becomes part of their identity, is that this lower carb keto way of eating, that makes them successful, because when it's who you are, there's no going off path of that. And being part of a tribe gives you that community. So I found that's really, really important, is that people have a community, that they don't feel like they're the odd person out, that they're the only one who's trying to do this, and that I'm not the only one, I'm part of this community, this is who I am.
And even if you are the only one out there, and sometimes you are, we might be the only kid on a baseball team not doing this, stick to it. It feels awkward in the beginning, and it's coming. Like when I see those things come out, I go, oh man, can I escape before they start passing them out? Because it's going to come. You're going to put yourself out there. But the more you do it, the better you get at it. And the more the people around you pick up on that. They'll stop asking. They'll change what they bring just to accommodate you. That might be selfish, but hey, I know if that helps every kid in there to get something a little bit less junky, then I'll be that. I'll be that selfish guy. And so you'll start to see the world around you start to change, but you got to be consistent. And you got to be centered, and you got to make those hard choices. You don't have to be a jerk about it. I've been that too. It doesn't work that well. You just got to be solid in it and keep doing it and hold that line. And in your world will start, you influence more people than you think. And you'll start to make an impact. And then they'll start asking you questions, and they'll start coming around. And those who don't. But those who do, that's your tribe, and you start to form it, and they're going to be with you, and you can be there for them.
Yeah. Well, and you probably really liked what R.D. Dykman said at the conference about, his son has type 1 diabetes, and he plays football, and somebody had a question about, like, well, what treats do you bring after football? And he was like, they don't need treats. Yeah. They just ran around for like 30 or 40 minutes. Like, they're not starving. They're going to be fine. They don't even need anything.
That's so hard. I do that with all of the football, baseball, volleyball, lacrosse. Everything that we do is like, you don't need a carb load the night before. We bring our own meals to these pasta dinners for football. I'm sorry if they think I'm nuts. I'm like, you're going to decrease performance if you do this. And number two is you don't need a pre-workout, you don't need a mid-workout or mid-game or a post-game immediate snack. You're going to throw off your system. Your system's priming for action, and you're going to say, stop acting and start digesting. No, it causes a problem. So skip them entirely. You don't need them.
Yeah. Well, yeah, because we've conditioned, everybody gives, something with sugar is love, and that's how you show you love people. And it's, if you look at it from the lens of, this is a drug, do you give people heroin to show them you love them? No, you would never do that. But we're conditioned that, sugar's legal, therefore it's not that big of a deal. But any parent who knows, a procedure that they do to babies in the hospital, they give them sugar water because it numbs pain that well. It works in the brain. Like, doctors know that. How are we not acknowledging that in our society, that we've got this drug epidemic and it's not what we think it is?
Well, the problem with food-based addiction is it's stronger than drug addiction, because drug addiction triggers dopamine pleasure receptors in the brain. So does food. But when it goes into your system and the pancreas releases insulin, the pancreas also holds serotonin in there, in the body, not the brain, in the body. And when that serotonin comes out with the insulin, then it causes a relaxation in the body. So now you've got a pleasure center firing off in the brain, and your body get that instant sense of relaxation, and you got a double whammy there that doesn't happen with drugs. So, it is more powerful than that. That's why mama rats will, give up their pups to get the sugar, where they won't give up their pups when they're strung out on crack. That's pretty strong. What would it take for you or any mom or dad to give up your kids for anything? That's how strong this could be in these systems. And so, gotta watch it. Gotta take it seriously.
Yeah, there was one of the attendees at the conference that we just went to. He was talking to one of the vendors there, and he talked about how being on a low-carb, high-fat diet took away 80% of his cravings for drugs. So he said he's been addicted to every drug out there, and he said that was one of the things he liked the most about that way of eating was that it took away his 80% of his cravings. But he also said that, being addicted to every drug that's out there, he said the absolute hardest drug he's ever had to kick was sugar.
Yeah.
He said it was by far harder than any other drug he's ever been addicted to.
Well, they do, and they use it in transition. If you look at what do they give
right.
heroin? People recover from heroin. They give them chocolate, straight up chocolate. What if you ever go to a 12-step like Alcoholics Anonymous?
Yeah.
There's bowls of chocolate and candies everywhere. If you have the sponsors, you hear them. They'll tell their sponsees, and when they're in a trouble point, to have some sugar, to have some chocolate, to get through it.
Yeah.
It's better to have a Coke than it is to have a beer at that point. And I get that in that scenario, but we're talking about the same pathway in the body that we're triggering.
Yeah, and that's why when people start drinking sodas, they very quickly are drinking 6 a day, 8 a day, 12 a day.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, okay, you are just full of awesome information. I love how passionate you are about this because we need, more people. I'm so glad you've started this tribe and that you are putting so much energy and passion into sharing this information because it's life-changing in a really important way, and it's not only life-changing, but it's community changing, it's country changing, it's world changing, this information. And so I'm just really, really glad that you're here sharing this with us. And
appreciate the opportunity. It's great.
Do you have anything else you were hoping that I would ask about, or anything else that you wanted to get out there? We'll make sure that we link all the ways to contact you and your videos you mentioned as well. We'll put that down below. But is there anything else that you were hoping that?
No, not in particular.
Okay.
I think this was great. I really appreciate the opportunity.
All right. Well, I have one closing question for you.
Yeah.
If you knew it was your last day on Earth, what would be your final meal?
My final meal. I would probably, it's pretty much how we eat all the time. I I wouldn't go sugar pizza and stuff like that because I'd want to feel good on my final final day. And if I do that now, I'd feel pretty bad. I think I'd really like to get, I like to grill a lot, so I would probably get some giant sea scallops, a whole bunch of butter, we would slow grill Brussels sprouts, and we would have a side of bacon going. That's the kind of stuff that I would go for. Yeah. And if I was ever going to cheat, my cheat meal, because a lot of people say, I had this cheat meal, and on the same kind of question, I'm like, well, why did you waste your cheat meal on that? You know what I mean? If I was going to go for a cheat meal, it would probably be good old-fashioned homemade ice cream. High fat, the good 10% plus, but still the sugar. There's other stuff in there, but I would probably do that. Or I do like dark chocolate. That would be a good. We make coconut oil chocolate, so I get it there. But that's how I would cheat. Once like you said, the hunger goes, the addiction level goes. Yeah. You're not drawn by emotional eating. You're not drawn by cravings. You don't have all this stuff pushing you. You can choose a lot better. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and I love that everybody have asked this question of. They all pick foods that they know make them feel good, because once you experience that and you know how bad the other stuff feels, like why would you ever want to feel that way? And you know how deeply satisfying eating those foods you described are. Like they taste delicious, they make you feel good, they make you feel satisfied. And
yeah. I mean, after you get used to it, it makes eating bread or a bowl of pasta.
Yeah.
If you ever wonder try eating a bowl of pasta with nothing else on it. And if it tastes that bad like that, what are we, might as well just eat the sauce.
If I go down the aisle, the bread aisle in the grocery store, it's like, it just smells really bad to me. It's like, something's wrong.
Yeah, and even pre and post Egyptian era, bread was peasant food. Bread was a way they tortured people when they locked them up. What did you feed a prisoner? Bread and water, because they waste it away. You can't live on it, right? Bread were reserved so that when your crops failed or you had a herd that went away, you could get by on bread until you had the next season, but never as a staple forever.
Hey, how do you grill Brussels sprouts? I've been curious about doing that, and
I just throw them on the grill.
Okay.
Just dump the bag on the grill.
You got small enough grates in yours that they don't fall through.
Yeah, or you can get one of those grill things, and I love Brussels sprouts on the grill.
My son's girlfriend, her favorite veggie is Brussels sprouts, and I got a bag in there right now. I'm going to do that this afternoon.
Oh, yeah, they go good. And then I always have a big thing, like a ramekin of butter with just a whole bunch of crushed garlic, like 40, and I just baste everything on the grill. with that. I also like fresh calamari on the grill.
Okay.
But it's got to be fresh because if not, it's rubber. When we live in Costa Rica, we get that very easily.
Okay.
We were good. What else do we like? We like mussels on the grill.
Oh yeah.
Just they can easily dry out there, so you got to watch them. And clams, we like the clams on the grill. We do a lot of good stuff. And then the veggies, if you kill chicken or steak, if you do long wedges of broccoli, they're really good on the grill and they don't burn too well. We like to do that. So we do anything. My wife I used to grill a lot of meat. And my wife challenged me. She's like, "That's not a meal. So you gotta have veggies." And I'm like, "Oh." And she's like, "So I learned how to grill veggies on the grill, and we just love that."
Yeah, it's great. Well, I thank you so much for being here.
Oh, thanks for having me.
Finally got this all coordinated and everything like that. I love your passion. I'm so excited to share all that you have coming up because I know there's big things coming from you.
and for you, this is the movement.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
keep at
well,
it.
it's important to people because everything out there that's going wrong with our society health-wise, it all has this underlying mechanism. So that's why so many things get better when you change what you're eating this way, is that it all has the same underlying mechanism.
And next time we'll come back and we'll tell them how they can save money on it when you work in fasting.
Oh yeah. Well, that's one of the myths. People think like, oh, this is an expensive way of eating. No, I save so much money. This is I spend so much less money on food now, and I have things like filet mignon and salmon and these wonderful things, and I spend less money than I ever did before. So yeah.
We do the rotational fasting. My wife loves it when I'm fasting.
Okay.
We save a lot of money. And so
well, it saves a lot of time too.
Do you fast too, buddy?
I barely go a minute.
He tries. He goes, "Dad, I'm gonna fast." He gets through maybe
overnight.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Well, we'll sign up for now. If you like this video, give us a thumbs up. Subscribe if you want to see more. We'll put all Dr. Dawn's contact info below there in the notes. And we'll see you next time. Thanks. Bye.